Welcome, everyone. This is VI series, and I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Bassem Ibrahim. He works for the Ministry of Investment. He's the Education and Training Lead. He has shown great support to our education providers in Australia, and he's with us today to tell us a little bit more about the sector, and then we can jump into the opportunities.
Absolutely. So the education sector itself in Saudi Arabia is considered to be the largest education market among the Gulf countries. We have almost 8 to 8.5 million students in our education sector, from KG up to higher education. And one of the most sectors that the government cares about and spends its money on is definitely education. For the last 3 to 5 years, basically, education was on top of the government spending, more than the healthcare, more than anything you could imagine. It's always that education that should come first. We have almost now about 25,000 public schools that offer education from first graders to 12th grade. We have almost another 6,000 private schools that deliver K-12 education as well. We have almost 28 universities. So basically, as you can see now, the government spending and the government care on, and the government paying more attention to the education sector every year, and all this has resulted in all these numbers that I just gave you. The Ministry of Education itself is now even opening more and more opportunities and more segments for the private investors and also the government investors as well.
Okay, great. So there are lots of opportunities in the K to 12, and I know there are lots of opportunities in the higher education, and I know there are lots of opportunities in the vocational education sector. So if we can go by
segment,
can you tell us a little bit more about what are you doing? What are you trying to accomplish in the K to 12 sector, and what are you trying to accomplish in the vocational education sector and then higher education?
Absolutely. So, if you are going to look at the K-12 segment today in Saudi Arabia, we have done quite a good research with our friends from different research institutions. We have also worked hand by hand with the Ministry of Education to understand the future demand of the K-12. So we have came to a conclusion where we think that in 5 to 8 years, there will be a demand of a minimum 1 million seats in the Saudi education sector. And to meet this big demand and huge demand, you need to have more and more partnerships and more and more private investors to establish their own private schools. And the government also will need more and more buildings and public schools to meet the demand. The KG alone, the kindergarten segment alone, is expecting to have an additional 300,000 seats. And in the G12, from grade 1 to grade 12, we're expecting around 600 to 700,000 seats. And this also will let us be more flexible and more dynamic in working around different curriculums and bringing more and more expertise from all the parts in the world. Basically, the top 3 of them, maybe American curriculums, British. We would love to see Australian curriculum as well in Saudi Arabia, and the list goes on. So this is when it comes to the KG or the K-12 in general. The segment is really promising. The opportunities there are really bright, and most of the investors that you can speak with in this segment will tell you that it is a very promising segment. It is a very promising future for this segment, for the students and for the investors and for the country and the nation. When you go to the higher education, it's a different story. Higher education now is going through a complete transformation. I'm sure you heard about the new law for the universities that was approved by the king. I'm sure that you heard about the new law for the private universities, also approved by the king, because the king himself is looking at this as a serious case and a serious something really serious to be handled and taken care of. So we have now, or the Ministry of Education has now allowed all the universities in Saudi Arabia to become independent, to have their own space, and also to go over all the majors, the outdated majors that have been offered by the universities. New industries are coming up, new sectors are opening up, new revolution for technologies is now happening at the time we speak right now, especially with the pandemic and the coronavirus procedures and measures. So the universities will become more relaxed and more independent. They will even have to find their own sources of revenues and sources of funding, which means you will see some of the universities also investing in some of the technologies and some of the maybe promising businesses in order to keep their research and studies and delivery of education going. When it comes, so that's one thing. The other thing would be definitely allowing the foreign universities to establish in Saudi Arabia, which was a big thing for us. And approving this law by the king allowed us to talk more with foreign universities and foreign campuses. We are talking now with several filming academies. We're talking now with several universities who have majors, specialized majors in entertainment and culture, in the most unique majors that we believe we will need from now on. Maritime engineering, space, drones, a lot of things that require foreign expertise. Now we're in contact with several universities, and we would also love to see some of the Australian universities getting involved in this conversation. So that's the second part. The third part would be definitely the technical and vocational. We are experiencing industries and segments opening up, but cannot wait for another 4 or 5 years to qualify workers in those industries. So we need to put our future workers and our future students on some fast track programs, and that will be absolutely through the technical and vocational training. 1 to 2 to maybe 3 years maximum programs and degrees in very specific areas and very specific majors. It might be in the entertainment, might be in the in the renewable energy, might be in power, solar power, but it will be booming very soon. So we have to make sure that we have the qualified workforce ready, and they have the qualifications that they need up to date to serve those industries and segments. So if you look at all these 3 or 4 segments, those are the most unique, promising segments in Saudi Arabia. K-12, including kindergarten and G12, higher education, including universities and academies, and then the technical and the vocational training. We are also now looking at maybe the last one, could be like a bonus segment in Saudi Arabia, because it's becoming now a very big market for Saudi Arabia and a promising market for Saudi Arabia, the executive education itself. I'm sure you have seen so many Saudis traveling to London, traveling to Singapore, traveling to Dubai, traveling to Bahrain, traveling to the US, just to get their executive training in one of the universities or one of the educational providers. It's basically executive training. So why not bringing those institutions to the grounds of Saudi and let them deliver the training here? And this specific training is not limited for anyone. I mean, any government or private company any government institution or a private company can send their own employees to have their executive training. So it is a very, very big market, especially that we have over maybe 8 million employees in the private sector, and maybe we have another 2 or 3 million employees in the government sector.
But my last question, Bassem. So, what are the services that the Ministry of Investment will provide to any education provider who is looking to enter the Saudi market and establish?
Absolutely. I mean, in the Ministry of Investment, we truly would love to let the world know that we are your strategic partner. We are your strategic partner in your journey in Saudi Arabia. Whenever you think about establishing in Saudi Arabia or understanding the work environment or the business environment in Saudi Arabia, please come and ask us. You will find us taking your hand by hand to several stakeholders in Saudi Arabia that will help you understand the ecosystems, the needs, the market, the demand, and everything you need to know about the sector you are interested in, whether it's education or other sectors as well. But when it comes to education itself, we will make sure that, first of all, most of the institutions visiting from Australia are familiar with the Saudi system, Saudi education system. That's first of all. We will make sure that they become connected to those relative stakeholders in the education sector, the Ministry of Education and the others. We will make sure that they can visit some of the sites. We will make sure that they can visit some of the schools. We can, deliver some good meetings for them with real institutions in Saudi Arabia here to help them, become more and more familiar with what we do here in Saudi Arabia. Also, we have several committees that we are part of in different sectors, including the education sector. And in these committees, most of the stakeholders in the education sector sit on these committees. Sit on them. So basically, you will find that the Ministry of Education is there, the Technical and Vocational Corporate is there, the Education and Training Evaluation Commission is there. So we talk with each other, and we are with each other all the time. We will make sure that we introduce every institution and every investor to them according to their business case needs. If it was a new school that they want to open, or a new university, or a new campus, or a new educational consultancy firm, we will definitely do whatever it takes to help them establish in Saudi Arabia and overcome all the challenges along the way of these establishments. And at the same time, we'll help them expand if it needs.
Yeah. That's great. That's perfect. Thank you very much, Bassem, for your time.
Absolutely, anytime. It is a tough time right now, but definitely Australia is on our radar, to be honest. And I feel really bad that we haven't done much with Australia. And when we suddenly decided to do everything with Australia, everything now is happening with the pandemic and coronavirus, and it's unfortunate. But Australia is on our radar, and you remember how many times we planned a road show to Australia and a full trip to Australia. We would love to do it once the traveling is back and once people's lives go back to normal, hopefully, which will be very, very soon. So we'd definitely love to visit Australia and maybe have a list of the top institutions there that we can talk to and try to invite them to Saudi Arabia to see the environment, to see the culture, to try to figure the demand in Saudi Arabia. And we will help them also meet some great people here in Saudi Arabia who can also help them to understand the market.